Tomorrow night, Joe's teleprompter is going to try to convince you everything is going great because the unemployment rate is low. But what he and his teleprompter will fail to mention is the number of lazy asses who no longer choose to find work, much less work at all. It's time for Final Thoughts. The big game may be this weekend, but if stuttering lies, half-truths, and gaslighting behind a lectern is more your thing, tomorrow night's State of the Union address will be your Super Bowl. But the American people have already spoken. According to a poll from ABC, 40% of Americans say they are worse off financially than they were 2 years ago, yes, under Trump. And that is the most negative response to that question in nearly 40 years. Still, Joe, or more accurately, the Gen Z or millennial liberal arts major who wrote the speech, will spin the negatives, and there are a lot of them, into positives. Like, yes, our border is wide open and millions of largely unvetted illegals from all corners of the globe are waltzing in to take advantage of taxpayers, but at least paper companies will benefit from the millions of extra mail-in ballots sure to be printed and sent out in future election cycles. Or, yes, we still have an egg and a baby formula shortage, but at least blue states are alleviating some of the pressure on population by passing extreme, unfettered abortion protections. And when it comes to the multi-school bus-sized balloon elephant in the room, I'm sure Joe will tell us that what we saw in the sky over the weekend wasn't the Chinese successfully entering our airspace with a spying apparatus. It was simply a free hot air balloon show sponsored by the CCP. How generous. And last but not least, when it comes to the economy, Joe will undoubtedly tout the low unemployment rate that's at just about 3.4%, a 53-year low, which is fantastic. It really is. Unless you take into account inflation rate and wage growth in comparison, plus this little fact nugget, the roughly 7.2 million men in their prime working ages between 25 and 54 that are simply not working. They have simply decided that whole working thing is not for them. You've heard of MILF and DILF. Well, these are NILFs, the men not in the labor force. As it sits now, there are about 1.5 jobs to every one worker, way more jobs than people who want to fill them. More than 770,000 manufacturing jobs are open right now, and these are high-paying jobs with many positions offering more than $30 an hour on average. So I don't want to hear these liberals say it's a pay thing. It's not. It's a frickin' work ethic thing. And how did we get here? Well, part of the problem, as it always is government-made. For 2+ years, federal and state governments passed out COVID checks and extended unemployment benefits, convincing many people it was their health and public safety duty to stay home and fear COVID. The government conditioned and incentivized laziness, and now here we are. But it's also a culture problem, folks. Americans, specifically pussified young men, don't want to do the dirty and dangerous jobs anymore. They want to make TikTok videos and be influencers or buy and sell bitcoins from the basement with a video game controller on their lap. As a society, we've taught young people that work-life balance, heavy on the balance and light on the work, is the new vibe. We've also created a culture where employees now feel entitled to work from home on their own schedule in their pajamas. And that might work for some professions, but hint, hint, not manufacturing and manual labor jobs that require real pants and shoes. So where do we go from here, folks? How do we convince 7.2 million men in prime working age that earning a living is something that's not only necessary, but something to be proud of? More so, how do we teach and convince younger generations that there are jobs worth doing that don't involve selfies and virtual reality? Make America work again. So a teenage girl exercises her First Amendment rights by voicing her very legitimate concerns regarding a biological male with male parts using the women's locker room in Santee, California. What does she get? Support from the community? From the feminists? No, she gets labeled a bigot and the Rainbow Mafia descends on the council because apparently being uncomfortable around a penis in the women's locker room is far right and extreme. Welcome to California. Joining me now with his passionate take is the owner of Metroflex Gym in Oceanside, California, and host of the dreaded Patriots show, Lou Uridell. Lou, it's great to have you. It's been a long time coming. And first of all, God bless you for sticking it out in California, sir.
Yeah, what can I say? I love this place out here, and I'm going to keep fighting for it.
Well, that's fantastic because somebody needs to fight for it unless it completely falls into the ocean, which would be a very sad day because of the natural beauty and the weather. But I want to talk about this first situation, this YMCA, and what's going on here. A 17-year-old girl says, hey, I don't really like being around male parts in my women's locker room, not appropriate. Now, 5 years ago, that would have been a battle cry for the feminists, the Me Too movement. They would have said, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is abusive. But now, flash forward, the LGBTQ rainbow mafia sets in, and now this girl is the one that's being labeled a bigot and problematic. Tell me what's going on there.
Well, it's pretty simple. Real women can't be men. It's just how it works. Or real men can't be women, I guess, is the thing. It's this absurd inclusion that excludes everyone that has a rational thought. And they label you as a bigot or a homophobe if you disagree with them. And that's what's going on. This girl goes in, she sees this guy in there, she feels threatened, and the YMCA staff tells her, listen, if what you're seeing in there isn't a man, that's a woman, and you shouldn't be worried about it. And this is happening. These things happen, it's going to start a cascade effect. This is a slippery slope. Men are going to start getting the ideas, and they can start going into women's locker rooms. You're going to have perverts. You're going to have all kinds of things happening, and this just can't happen. It's an assault on women, and it's an assault on women's identity.
Well, it doesn't surprise me coming out of California because there is a groupthink mentality there that if you do voice something that upsets the rainbow mafia, we know that it's incredibly liberal and it's very LGBTQ friendly to a fault in many places. But this is very typical of something that would happen in California, especially now this rallying cry that by saying that you don't feel uncomfortable seeing male parts in your women's locker room, that somehow now you are transphobic and homophobic and an awful person and a bigot. I mean, this is the snowball effect, and this is how they win these types of arguments because people just give up. They don't want to be called a name. But is there something that can be done in this specific situation with this YMCA to maybe change the tune here and so that average people like yourself could stand up and make a difference?
So what we're doing is we're going down to the Santee City Council. We're going to show up in force and in numbers, and we're going to speak out. The YMCA, they're completely dedicated to this agenda. So we have to go around them. So the city of Santee has a lease with the YMCA for $1 a year. That's what they pay. I would love a lease like that for my gym, but they have a lease for $1 a year. So we're going to ask the city to cancel that. We get enough people down there, we'd be loud enough. That's the goal. Cancel the lease, close down the YMCA. It'll be a victory. It'll send a message to a lot of other YMCAs out there.
No, that's fantastic. And that's something that's a great solution-driven idea, which I love. But you brought up that you're a gym owner, and I know in California, you guys had a real hell of a time during COVID. It lasted far longer. I got to tell you, Lou, I left LA, California. I left on April 1st, 2020. So I saw the writing on the wall. I was there in March when we were the first state to lock down, and I said, get me out of here as fast as possible. But I, for the life of me, cannot imagine living in California during that time and how ass backwards everything was. Gyms are closed, beaches are closed, hiking trails are closed. You're in the most beautiful state in the country, geographically speaking, and everything closes. As a gym owner, how did you fight back and how did you combat that?
Well, what we did was we closed down. The biggest mistake anyone made was closing down those first 2 weeks. It gave the government the power, and that's the one regret I have. We reopened around May 8th. Well, everything was still locked down. I got arrested on May 10th, shortly after that, and we just stayed open. We were the only gym basically open in Southern California, openly open. And members, we quadrupled our membership. People drove down from Pasadena, LA area to come work out at our gym because where else are you going to work out? Despite all the criminal charges that were threatened, the daily fines that were threatened, we came out on top because we stayed vigilant. And I give a big credit to that to my faith in Jesus and God, because I really leaned into him hard during those times.
I tell you, looking at California and knowing that you pretty much have to beg to be put behind bars in California because of the felon coddling policies. However, I watched them go and try to get surfers that were surfing during COVID by themselves on the wave, like sending in the Coast Guard because, well, heaven forbid, somebody out there surfing by themselves, they might spread COVID to the dolphins. I mean, it's absolutely absurd. But you being arrested for keeping a business open, a business that is based on health and fitness, this during a time of what is supposed to be a health crisis. Now, you got to tell me how you felt now that all the studies are coming out that, oh boy, big shocker, exercise and physical fitness is one of the best ways to combat long COVID, and every other ailment in general. Did you feel like you had some vindication there? Not that you needed it?
Yeah, I mean, I've always felt I was right. I always felt that that was the only true vaccine there was staying healthy, seeing as how 75% of the people who are in the ICU were overweight or obese. So they're shutting down the one avenue to keep people out of the ICU, and they're telling you to stay home and order DoorDash and Netflix, which frankly is just going to make people get fat and unhealthy. So I did feel that, and I believe that what we had to do was just fight back and stay open. Unfortunately, many business owners just didn't do that.
They didn't do it, and then their saving grace was they got those PPP loans. But at the end of the day, when you've built a business, you don't want a check from your fellow taxpayers. You want to stay open and you want to operate your freaking business, which is why you're in business to begin with. It was so detrimental. And I know that Californians are still in love with their masks. I see it. I see the love affair with masks. They love them. They'll always wear them. We now know that masks are also useless. Many of us knew that all along, but the science keeps coming out, and all of us conspiracy theorists that were shamed and called grandma murderers turned out to be right at every turn. Next thing I want to turn to, though, is another problem that you guys are still experiencing. We know that LA has a homeless crisis. We know San Francisco has a homeless crisis. San Diego has always had a bit of a problem with homelessness, but now it is exploding to such a level that we haven't seen before. What in the heck is going on in San Diego, California?
You know, Tommy, I don't want to beat this dead horse anymore, but it seems like a common theme with these cities falling apart and homelessness seems to be the leadership that is leading these towns. Todd Gloria, as a Democratic mayor, was elected in 2020, and this city has seen an explosion in homeless people. And frankly, there's tent cities. The homeless people are getting more aggressive, and there's really nothing being done. Nothing's being done to address the mental illness and the drug addictions is causing this, because frankly, no one chooses to be homeless. No one wants, hey, I want to live on the streets in a tent in the middle of San Diego. And I was just down there the other day and driving around near Balboa Park area, and it was just tents lined up down the street. And I remember even just back in 2019 when I was driving down there, those streets were wide open, no tents, no homeless people. So it's a big problem. I think they're relying a lot on nonprofits doing all the work rather than trying to work with the nonprofits.
Yeah, but another part of the problem is you said nobody wants to be homeless. I'm going to disagree with you slightly. I think that there are some individuals, because I've seen them in Venice, in San Diego, in San Francisco, in Portland, that maybe they don't want to be homeless, but when the alternative is working, getting off drugs, and having to make your own way in life, and instead you can be in a tent, and you can do drugs, and you can live a carefree life, I think some people do choose that. Now, are they addicted? Do they have mental health issues? Absolutely. But California makes it very comfortable to sit in a tent on oceanfront property and just live your best life. In their opinion, that is what a lot of them are doing, because I've spoken to them. There's a lot of people that maybe they would love to be in a mansion, but if that means cleaning up, getting a job, and being a productive member of society, they're better off, in their view, being in a tent and enjoying the view. So that's part of the problem. Being homeless has gotten far too comfortable in these places, and these people don't seek help because they don't necessarily feel like they've hit rock bottom yet. That's part of the problem. But you mentioned leadership. So the last question I have for you, I have a very, very strong feeling that Gavin Newsom is going to run for president in 2024. I already see him gearing up. I lived under Gavin Newsom's tyranny for a few years. I know that you've lived under it much longer. What do you think about Gavin in 2024?
Oh, sure. Why not? I mean, if you want the rest of the country to experience what California is going through, I remember before the second lockdown, he declared Small Business Month in California, and then 2 days later, locked down the entire state. His idea for reparations for everyone in California, I think it comes up to like $50 billion because of Black people who were prejudiced in the 1930s for buying houses. How can we be the fifth largest economy in the world, but the state's on a brink of financial anarchy? We have the highest gas prices, the highest energy prices, and now they're trying to get rid of gas stoves in California. I mean, why wouldn't the rest of the country be dying to have Gavin Newsom lead them the way he's led California into the abyss? It's just a perfect, great. Why not?
Well, I mean, what we have in the White House is admittedly not great, but I'll tell you what worries me more about Gavin Newsom in closing is that unlike Joe Biden, that man can speak. He is very charismatic. And when people listen to him, it's a lot like the Obama effect, that they see the policies play out, they see that it's crap, but he sounds good saying it, and he's very convincing when he does say it. So that is what I'm most concerned about with Gavin Newsom. But it's going to be up to people like you who lived in California, people like me that lived in California, that can say this is not what you want, America. So I think that just like me, you're waiting in anticipation to hear that State of the Union tomorrow night, and maybe we'll get a nugget of greatness. But Lou, thank you so much for sticking out the fight in California and hopefully making a big difference, at least where you are. God bless you, and thank you for fighting back against COVID tyranny as well.